Good evening, all. Welcome to our True Crime Podcast. My name is Kara, and I'm here with my longtime friend, Carole. If this is your first time tuning in with us, we are two best friends who have known each other since 7th grade, getting together virtually from opposite ends of the country to drink wine and talk about crime. Our disclaimer is that we're not professionals, and it's not our intention to downplay the seriousness of the cases that we discuss on this podcast. We might make light of certain things, but again, our goal is to have fun while trying to make sense of true crime cases that really speak to us. We recently finished up our summary and analysis of the Chris Watts case, and today we'll be discussing the case of Lester Eubanks. If you're not familiar with Lester Eubanks, he could be the poster boy of a narcissistic predator. We're going to talk about his crimes, but we're also going to talk a lot about his escape from prison. It really makes me sick to think about how many lives he's ruined and that he's just walking around free. And if you've ever wondered why people spend time talking about true crime, I really believe this case might convince you that ordinary people might hold the key to keeping convicted murderers off the streets simply by really being aware and reporting things that doesn't make sense. And not to go all the way back to our episodes about Chris Watts, but I really love looking for the badass people in these stories. The people who really make or break the case by stepping forward and speaking out. And if you remember from Chris Watts, I felt like the best friend Nicole really kind of made that case what it was, not allowing Chris to really get away with, having more time to prepare or cover his tracks. And I really have mad respect for those people. This case has potential for a badass to speak up. In addition to being brave, the reward for his arrest has also been increased to $50,000, I believe. So, like I said, if you really want to kind of perk your ears up and listen to some of the things that we talk about in this podcast, and if anything sticks out to you as something familiar, this might be the time to contact the authorities because there's definitely good reasons for trying to help this person get caught. Okay, so let's jump into what Lester has done, which really led to his conviction. In a small town in Ohio in the mid-'60s, 22-year-old Lester Eubanks had already been charged with multiple violent sex offenses and was out on bond for attempted rape. And at this point in his life, he already had a pattern of preying on younger girls. He was described by some in the town as a good-looking guy who was also very smooth. And it's really sad to think about how he was just out walking the streets the night of the murder, given his previous record. In 1965, two sisters left home to dry their family laundry because their dryer at home broke. And so these sisters took a taxi with their wet clothes to a laundromat that was very, very close to their grandmother's house. I can't remember if it was around the corner or just, a couple of houses down. I don't remember what it was, but it was really close to the house. And this really made their mother feel comfortable with the location and time of night, knowing that they could go to their grandmother's for any reason if something, came up. But while drying their clothes, they ran out of change. And so one of the sisters stays at the laundromat with the laundry. And the other sister, 14-year-old Mary Ellen, she leaves to walk to the nearest laundromat for change. And so Mary Ellen never returns. And after a while, her sister goes to her grandmother's house to explain what's going on. Their grandmother starts walking to the laundromat where Mary Ellen was headed, which was only about a 5-minute walk. So it was not far at all to this other laundromat. This girl was not on the streets for very long. And the grandmother really never gets to the laundromat because the police have barricaded off part of the sidewalk. And the barricade was for the crime scene where Mary Ellen's body was found. And she learned from the police that she died from 2 gunshot wounds. So after some initial detective work, looking for clues and finding a bullet, taking it to talking to local shops who sold guns similar to the gun believed to have been used at the crime scene based on, the bullet found at the scene, the police find a store who sold a gun matching the one believed to have killed Mary Ellen to a person named Lester Eubanks. So the police find Lester, and they interrogate him, and Lester confesses to killing Mary Ellen. And so this case is fairly straightforward, given the evidence, just how soon everything happened, and the fact that he confessed. He gives the police a very detailed confession, and he even testifies in his own trial. And this is something that has recently got a lot of traction. And I remember that one of the officers involved in the case, he kind of made a comment that was just a really classic narcissistic characteristic where he, is perfectly, like, he's wanting to get up on stage and really kind of take credit for, what he's done. Unsurprisingly, after this detailed confession, and he goes up on the stand and even, testifies to what he did, unsurprisingly, Lester Eubanks was convicted of murder, and he was sentenced to the death penalty in the state of Ohio. A weird random fact that might seem random now is that Lester really enjoyed painting, and he was actually allowed to have paint in his cell, paint brushes and objects to paint on to really help pass the time.
Yeah.
This becomes an important fact later, but just kind of going back to, he's on death row, and they really want prisoners to be able to have something to do with all of their time. So it was there's pictures of him in his cell painting pictures of course, young women.
Yeah.
And so other death row inmates recalled that they really didn't care for Lester. Obviously, I didn't look into all of them, but just some of them just remember him describing him as kind of cocky and very opinionated. But his execution was pushed back 3 times for some reason. I'm really not sure why, but it was. And it was pushed back so far that in that meantime, Ohio actually abolished the death penalty in their state in 1972. So keep in mind, the murder happened in 1965. So he really hasn't been in prison for very long before the death penalty is abolished. And now this causes his death sentence to become a life sentence instead.
Mm-hmm.
So Lester was moved to the general population, and he, at that point, started winning over the guards. I kind of thought this was important because the way that his death row inmates, kind of described him or recall him acting was much different than how the guards recall him acting. And I feel like that's going to become also kind of apparent as to, maybe why that is. I feel like when you're on death row, it's like there might not be really much point in maybe being nice to people. Mm-hmm. And then now that he's not on death row, there might actually be reasons to kind of win over the guards for various things.
Right. Like if should I say something? Okay. Sorry. If you're a narcissist, like, you're not going to be nice to people unless you get something from them. And so, like you said, on death row, there's nothing to get anyone from on death row. There's nothing for them to offer him. So he's not going to waste the energy, and he's just going to be his true cocky self. And he probably was maybe giving some, in my opinion, maybe some bravado, because when you are in prison, it's a very, you want to be left alone. A lot of people, which I can understand, because you don't want to have trouble with anyone. And in that case, so that's probably a lot where that came from, in my opinion. And then when he was off death row, then he had a reason to be nice to the officers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like it just kind of reiterates that unless there was something in it for him, he didn't really have a good reason to be, like, nice to people.
Right.
So he started winning over the guards, and the guards actually described him more as a smooth talker. And this eventually led to Lester being allowed into the prison honor program. You can't see, but I'm putting that in air quotes because it annoys me, and you'll see why. So it's like they admitted him into this honor program based on his ass-kissing skills rather than taking his crimes into account. And that just really pisses me off, because it's very clear that he's kind of like schmoozing the guards. And then because this honor program even exists, that was like the first like carrot dangling out there, that there was something in it for him to start being nice to the guards so that he could try to get into this honor program. And the reasons for that also kind of become apparent. So this part of the story just drives me really crazy to think about, because at this time in history, a great deal was being done to really help inmates prepare for life on the outside. But I really just don't understand how he would qualify for something like that. It's just like, okay, an honor program for this guy. Keep in mind, like, he's only really been in prison for 7 years at this time. And so this honor program actually allowed Lester, under certain circumstances, to venture outside of the prison. And sometimes these honor program members were allowed to run errands in the presence of the guard. Which is
Who thinks of this? Like, I want to know how someone's logic goes from death row to letting outside in civilian clothes. Not even outside, but being not even being I can't think of words today, but not even being not chauffeured, but like watched during that time. He had time to be by himself. All right, so I don't get how, and I get back then they were really trying to do this whole like giving prisoners purpose and rehabilitation, which what prison should be about, but up to an extent. And you also have to look at the actual crime. There's people that are sitting in prison for, their whole life for selling pot. You know what I mean? And then we go from this guy, just because he's a smooth talker, from death row to being able to have his freedom temporarily in civilian clothes. There's no logic to me there. That was a big no on the police front. Like, there's really no one else to blame on that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I completely agree because I know that, like, I think you and I have had personal conversations before about, like, perception and how it can be really influential at work or just with other people. So it just really irks me that in our prison system with the people that, like, have, committed, like, these crimes, that this wasn't reserved for someone who is actually going to be able to go out and use those skills. Like, whatever it is that they're trying to help these people with by doing this honor program, I feel like, everything else just got thrown out the window because he's, like, a smooth talker and can schmooze, like, the guards. And so that just, like, bothers me so much.
Right. It's definitely, and I just feel like it just was not even like, oh, like, let me, give you some extra little Debbie's or something. It went all the way to, and it wasn't just the guards, someone had to stamp that and hire above, you know what I mean, to allow him into that program, so I don't know, the whole thing was very strange to me.
Yes, exactly. And like, yeah, because I mean, I feel like, building up skills, like, that's one thing, but yeah, like you mentioned, he wasn't even escorted. And so we'll get more into like how, or a little bit more into his like escape. But yeah, I mean, it's not like he had someone standing right next to him the whole time. And so this type of program just really doesn't make sense to me. So I'll continue to rant a little bit more about it just because, like, I just find it, obviously things have changed now, but this is all just leading up to understanding how he actually got away. Because most people think of like, oh, this person escaped from prison. Like, yeah. They have something very different in their heads, because I know I did not have this in my head, like, at all.
Gosh, Lester, you ruined it for every other prisoner. One bad apple.
Yeah, and I guess just to reiterate, too, that, like, what really blows my mind about him being allowed into this honor program and being allowed to, like, go out in the world is that, like, he didn't have anything to lose. So I know that we kind of talked a little bit about how, okay, well, they didn't take his crimes into account because, like you said, it's like, okay, if you had to choose between somebody who is, like, dealing pot and someone who's a multiple, like, sex offender and killed a little girl, it's like, who are you going to choose to be able to have this honor program, to be able to go out and, like, quote unquote, run errands? And it's like, yeah, he had nothing to lose, like, and everything to gain by, like, abusing the system.
And he didn't have any even remorse. He was just like, yeah, I did it. He didn't try and cover it up. He didn't try and apologize. It was just, I almost like him more than Chris Watts, because at least he was just like, yeah, I did it. I'd do it again. By the way, can I leave half the day? Like, it's like, it's just so chill. Like, I mean, you never once, I mean, I'm sure everyone is aware that this is an unsolved, I don't know if you mentioned it, but it is an unsolved mystery on Netflix, and watching it, it's just one of those things where you're just like, and I forget what I was saying, just continue, sorry. I'll edit that.
Well, I think you were just saying, like, you almost like him better than Chris Watts because at least he comes out and, like, fesses up to it and, like, owns his shit rather than, right. Like,
keep backtracking and acting like this innocent flower. And yeah, I mean, during the whole thing, there was no remorse at all. He just confessed, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There was no, I'm sorry. There was no excuses. There was just no trying to run. It was just, yeah, I did it. Okay. Like, so I don't know. I just want to put him in that program.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do have the chance, like, I highly recommend the Netflix show on Unsolved Mysteries. It's one of the episodes in there for season 2. And you're so right. Like, I think Mary Ellen's sister is talking a lot in that particular episode. And she even says towards the end, she's like, no one ever, like, he never apologized. He never even asked his, like, father or any of his, like, family members to apologize to us for what happened. It's like there was no remorse, and not even any, like, I don't call it fake remorse, but it's just like how easy, or what a cop out it also would have just been to, like, say, like, oh, hey, can you tell them I'm sorry? Like, that way you don't have to do it yourself, but at least, like, there was some gesture. And it's like there was just nothing.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so again, he's got nothing to lose and really everything to gain. And so, like, I was trying to understand what they meant by, like, they can run errands. But, like, picture this, y'all. So he's in his jail cell painting art and shit. And then he actually entered art shows and won prizes for his art.
He's actually a good painter. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I actually was impressed. I was kind of like, ooh, Etsy.
Yeah, he was a really good painter for sure. So not saying that, like, his art, like, wasn't good enough to win art shows, but, like, he's, like, in his jail cell painting his art, and then there's pictures of him standing at these art shows with other people who don't know who he is, what he did, or even what he's capable of. And these, like, there's women who are just, like, smiling for the camera next to a serial sex offender and convicted murderer. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely insane. Like, and so I'm not sure on this. So the women in the picture didn't know he was a sex offender? Like, they didn't tell her or anything like that, or tell them, or?
They didn't get too deep into it, but I think on the Netflix episode, one of the police officers was just saying that maybe not those specific women in the picture, but, like, even when they're just out walking around, like, no one has any indication. So I don't think that they, like, made everyone aware. I don't know if, like, the people running the event were at least aware that there were going to be, like, convicts, like, entered into the thing.
Right.
But it sounds like for a majority of people, because they are trying to maybe help them get those, like, skills to be able to reassimilate, like, maybe they felt like telling everyone, like, makes them be treated differently. I don't know, but they made it, the officers they were interviewing for the case, they made it sound like most of the time, like, on these errands, no one really knows that they're, like, convicted criminals and they're wearing street clothes and they're just treated like normal people.
Right. And I mean, I get wanting to rehabilitate people. I get that. And I feel like that's something that we are missing in the justice system. I just feel like we have a very big lock them up type thing, and or if they have mental illness, which, like, the majority of them do, people that are in the prisons, they just either give them pills or just, lock them up and that's it. And I do think there needs to be more rehabilitation options nowadays, but that's therapy. That's, maybe, working a job in the jail, like, feeling useful that way. Because I remember in the Netflix series, one of the officers or one of the individuals involved said, we did that program so they feel like they have purpose and, like, thing, but there's other ways around it instead of just, like, letting them go or whatever the case may be. Like, they can make certain things for the general public. They can do a call center. Like, there's so many other avenues you can go to make them feel like they have purpose. And that also includes hobbies, but not outside of the prison, especially for what this man did to the little girl.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was even thinking, too, that it's like, I feel like even just submitting your art and not being there in person is still, like, a privilege, So, like, I don't feel like he needed to be there, like, in the flesh. Like, I feel like his art, like, even, okay, let's just pretend, like, he's had really good behavior, and these types of things encourage good behavior, which obviously just helps everything just run smoothly. Like, maybe allowing him to submit his art is one thing, but, like, seeing the picture of him standing next to these women with his art and the little, like, blue ribbon thing or whatever it was, like, I was just, like, shocked. I was like, I can't believe he's, like, they're letting him stand there. Like, it just was insane.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, there's so many other alternatives they could have gone, and I think they know now they definitely went. I mean, give them a TV, for goodness sakes, for a reward system. Like, like, they do that. They do that with underage people in prison or whatever. Like, if you do something good, here's your TV. Like, it's a janky TV, but it's a TV. Like, no, I'm so glad they've changed certain things.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. Like, I think they need things to be able to rehabilitate, but there were just so many flaws in this system.
So many.
Okay, so now in 1973, so just, again, 8 years after the murder of Mary Ellen, Lester is allowed to go Christmas shopping. So just keeping in mind, I was shocked about the art show thing, and now I'm even more shocked that, like, he's allowed to go Christmas shopping as a part of this, like, honor program. I'm still putting it in air quotes. Now, this part of the story is just really infuriating because I get that the program was supposed to incentivize good behavior and give inmates, something to look forward to. And, it's at least an opportunity to stay connected to civilization so that, it'll be easier to, like, reassimilate. But this just really blows my mind. So he and a group of other inmates are allowed to just roam the stores. So the way that the Netflix series almost kind of depicted it was like they all roll up in this van and then they just open the door and all these guys are out in civilian clothes and just allowed to, like, do whatever they wanted for basically 2 to 3 hours. And they were just supposed to meet back at the van at a certain time. So no escorts. It's not like there was a guard for each guy and they just got to go wherever they wanted with this guard. Right. No guards whatsoever. So they're just roaming free and need to be back by a certain time. So
that's like on a field trip, like for kids. You know what I mean? Or not even, I feel like kids on a field trip have less, like, freedom than that. That's like going on a cruise and being like stopping at a destination and being like, get back at this.
I feel like it's worse than that. I feel like it's like taking a junkie that's trying to quit and then just like leaving them in a room with some drugs for a couple of hours, like hoping that they don't do anything with it. Because like, I just feel like, first of all, we already know that, he escapes. But this is seriously enough time for him to rape a woman and they're just letting him roam unsupervised. Like, because that's what he's, like, known for. And, like, and the amount of time it took him to kill this little girl, like, I don't know. So, obviously, they're not taking into account, like, his past crimes. But it still just is, like, you just let him do whatever he wants. And he just gets to walk around all these, like, young girls and young women and with no supervision at all.
And if he did hurt someone, that would have been on them. So here's my question. I don't know if you know this, but was there any lead ups? Because, like, we know he escapes, but was there any, like, conversations that he had with people prior, like, that would give away that was kind of sketchy? Because I watched the show a while ago, so I don't quite remember. But was there anything that was, like, any red flags where it was like they were sending more letters than usual or, like, more guests than usual? Like, something that would have been like, here's a clue, like, to his escape. Like,
give me a clue. Yes. Yeah, there was actually, I don't know about the letters, but he had some frequent visitors, and the way that it was described is that these visitors, like, if they were monthly, leading up to his escape, they were, like, weekly. So I feel like there was absolutely a red flag that, okay, something is, like, going on. Now, maybe it's not a blatant, like, this guy's about to escape. But, I mean, definitely when they went back and looked at it, they believe that he had help because of that, because all these frequent meetings, it's very possible that he was trying to communicate with people. And knowing that he's a smooth talker, like, he's kind of likes to con his, like, way around and out of his bad situations. They do believe he had help with his escape, and it was the people that he was meeting with, like, frequently leading up to his escape.
God, there were so many red flags. I want to know what kind of prison this was. Was this like the Never Land prison? Like, I don't know. It's just with this crime, I just can't believe how he went from death row to this. But okay, continue.
Right, because I don't know how they treated death row inmates before, but they made a point to say that he got moved to the general population after the death penalty was abolished. Right. So that makes me think that he was really restricted before, and then now on top of this stupid honor program shit, he really did have a lot more freedom, even honor program aside. I think because now he's not on death row, quote unquote, because there is no death row. And so he's got more freedom as it is. And so it's just, yeah.
But there's still levels besides death row, like high risk inmates, like, you know what I mean? There's still different levels, and it just boggles my mind that he didn't, and like you said, it was only 8 years, and all of a sudden he's off death row and, like, in the mall. Like, so it boggles my mind that he didn't start in a high risk area. You know, like it should be done. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I didn't look into this, but I was even kind of wondering if like the painting, like he was only allowed to do that because he was on death row. I don't know if that's something that he was allowed to do in general. Like, you know what I mean? Because I think he was more isolated because he was on death row, and then they wanted him to be able to like have things to do, so they allowed that, like his painting. Mm-hmm. But maybe that wasn't something that they would allow if you were just in like. But yeah, to your point, I don't know what kind of levels existed at this place and what level he was in. But I assume if you're in an honor program, you can't possibly be in some like more strict version of the like prison. Mm-hmm. But who knows? I'm not really sure.
I want to know if he ever got any like mental like counseling before this and had like a therapist talk to him before putting in that honor program. You know what I mean? And like having the chance, because part of the prison is not only rehabilitation, but also being punished for what you did and getting remorse and understanding what you did and having, you know, empathy for that and realizing what you did was horrific and changed a lot of people's lives. And so I want to know if they did any counseling for him at all.
Yeah, and I guess just to also, I mean, just kind of thinking about like the question that you asked too. So the death penalty was abolished in 1972 for Ohio, and then like he escapes in 1973. So I'm just like, yeah. So he goes from being on death row, like you said, to Christmas shopping, and basically like it could have maybe been more than actually like a year, 12 months, quote unquote, since Christmas is at the end of the year, but like still like in not a very long time, like they get rid of death row, and then he's in like an honor, like he's already worked his way up to this honor program and is out like Christmas shopping. It's just like
it's mind-boggling, and it makes me, and I read into things a lot, as our audience will find out shortly if they haven't found out a lot already. But I really do, and so I have a habit of this, but it almost makes me think that it was more than just being chummy with the guards. Like, it almost seemed more strategic than that, like, to the point where it was the guards that, like, helped him get into that program for the purpose of escaping and ignoring the fact that he got a lot. You know, there were so many red flags. And you can tell, like, a lot of these people that were interviewed for the Netflix documentary, they were extremely intelligent. Like, they weren't, you know, and you could tell they were upset about it. Like, they were, you know, good police officers who want justice for victims don't like the wool pulled over their eyes. You know, they take great offense to that. They have great pride in their work. And, you know, that's a common denominator for good and bad cops. But for good cops, they don't like being tricked, you know, and you could see it. That's one thing I noticed in the documentary. You could see the cops were, the cops were, or the detectives were really visibly upset about this, and the lawyers and everything. And they wanted justice for this little girl. But it to me, I almost feel like since there was so many red flags and there was so many things that they missed and how quickly it was, I mean, like a year, there had to have been something. I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched to think about it, you know?
I don't think it's far-fetched at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think that that's totally possible. And, like, yeah, I don't know how he would have accomplished it, but there's just, there's so many, I don't want to say holes, but just, man, just like time after time in this whole story of things where you were just like, how did they let that happen? So it wasn't even just this one thing necessarily, but this was a pretty damn big one where it's just like, how did they let this happen? Like that was kind of the whole trigger for everything else that goes wrong and trying to capture him.
Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe 5-10 years eventually getting that program, even though I still think it would be stupid. But in a year, that really puts things in perspective for me. But, okay, you can continue.
So just to reiterate, that he's in civilian attire when all this happens. So there's really no indication to anyone in public to be, you know, wary of his behavior or, you know, that he's someone maybe to look out for or anything like that. And so according to, you know, the guards that were there, he just kind of walks away because they just know that he doesn't come back on time. And then that's when they know that they have to report that he's kind of on the run at that point.
Could you really imagine being that guard? I am sorry, but in that situation, like just being like, oh dear, I lost my prisoner. Like I don't like literally like.
trot back from their Christmas shopping, and then you were like, oh no, we lost one.
I can't believe a man that raped and murdered a little girl would just leave. Like, how is he not trustworthy? Like, and again, I'm not trying to be morbid, but my God, like, I will never get over this. Like,
no, it just blows my mind because that's exactly as you said. Like, oh, who would do that? Who would just escape? I'm pretty sure that he fits the perfect bill for that.
Like, it's like on a first date, like a blind date, and the person doesn't show up, and you're just waiting there, like, no, he'll come back. No, he said he loved me. Like,
yeah, goes back to what you said, like, either the guards had to be in on it, or, like, I just picture, like, I don't know, some cartoon, like, guard where it's just, like, he's coming back, we'll just give him 5 more minutes, and then it's, like, 3 hours, it's like, and he'd come back.
He was so cool, his painting of his doggy was so pure. He's a good painter, sir, we trusted him.
Right, I just, like, it blows my mind. And so now picture this, okay? Because after he avoids the death penalty, okay?
Motherfucker.
And then avoids his next sentence.
Yeah.
And now he's just out, like, he, like, gets to do whatever the hell he wants. And I'm just sitting here, like, I don't understand how we got to this point. Like, he goes from, like, death row to a life sentence to Christmas shopping to just, like, out free.
See? Chris, if you just confessed, like, at the beginning, you would have been out but free by now. It would have been all good. Like, no worries. I'm sorry. It's just, it boggles my mind. I understand it was a different time, but I was trying to figure out what time zone exactly and what planet, too, because it's crazy.
Yeah, so now, like, I really don't mean for this to sound funny, but, like, I seriously can't imagine being the family of Mary Ellen, and you get a freaking phone call from someone that the person who murdered your family member is just like, oopsie, I don't know what happened. We took him out to go Christmas shopping, and he was the van at the time that we said. Like,
I know, and her sister... Her sister, it was her sister in the thing that they interviewed, correct? She's so heartbroken. Her whole life was just drained from this. This one event just, like, you could tell just consumed her life. And then you come up to her and be like, whoopsie, like, we lost him. Like, could you, like, and they don't even tell her that he's in this program. Like, I am pro rehabilitation up to an extent, and up to what the crime is, and up to, I mean, pedophile, even prisoners don't even like pedophiles. Prisoners will kill pedophiles because they can't protect their own children. You know what I mean? And so they know that these scumbags are out there, like, preying on their children that they can't protect because they're in prison for selling weed. You know what I mean? So it's the worst of the worst of the worst hate pedophiles. And you just gave him this opportunity. It makes no sense to me, like, at all.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
He doesn't even come from money. He's not even, like... And again, he's not, like, a stereotypical, especially back then, very racist society. We still live in a racist society. He's not a white, male, rich man that had connections. He came from a poor socioeconomic background. He had nothing to offer. And I know that sounds horrible, but that's how the world works, especially in this type of, avenue. I don't know what made this man so special.
Yeah, it really, like, especially for you being more on the, like, psychology, like, front, I know that it's just, like, eating at you, where it's just, like, what did he say? How did he act? Like, how did he, like, get away with this? Because, yeah, I mean, like, it blows my mind. He committed the crimes in Ohio. So his sex offenses were in Ohio. He murdered the little girl in Ohio, and he was in the Ohio State Penitentiary, or some penitentiary in Ohio. And so whatever shopping mall it took him to go, like, Christmas shopping, how do they know that her, like, fucking sister wasn't there? You know what I mean? Like, it just still blows my mind that I'm just like, like you said, they didn't notify her that he was in this like honor program.
Mm-hmm.
And knows what of her like family members were still like living in Ohio. It's not like we're just confined to our little like towns where we live. Like we might drive somewhere to go like shopping. So right. It just like it still baffles my mind that I'm just like no one called to tell her, and that they still just let him like out. Like he could have been triggered by like seeing them, or maybe like had some resentment like towards like that family or something like that.
Right. Exactly. How did they know that his first thought wasn't to go after the family? Exactly. I didn't even think about that. Like, it's just, nothing makes sense. So either they were really, really stupid, or there had to have been more than just like smoothing the guards and getting into that program. You know what I mean? There had to have been more.
Yeah, there had to have been. So, like, I don't know. I bring this up just because, like, I can't imagine even just comprehending that, like, someone that killed one of my family members is out free and escaped. But then my very next thought would just be, like, holy shit, like, is he in my yard at this point? Because I don't know how long it took them to even, like, call me. And, you know, he's, like, he broke out in the States. And, like, clearly, like, I don't know, he could want some revenge. He's had, like, at least a few years to think about that. So it's just like, I can't imagine, like, so this guy is, and spoiler alert, this guy is, like, still at large, obviously. So I know I talked about that at the beginning with, like, the reward for any information. So, like, this family has had to live with that for, like, 45 years. It's just, it's insane that he could be, like, anywhere at any time. And, like, he might just decide to, like, I don't know, like, do something to them. Like, he knows who they are. So I don't know, all of that just, like, really, like, obviously bothers me, along with so many other things about this case.
All I know is I'm going to pick up the hobby of painting and become really, really good at it in case I get in this type of situation. I'll just paint my way out of prison.
Exactly. I mean, clearly that must have done it.
I know. It reminds me of the George Bush pictures. You remember those a while back after he stopped being president? And he, like, had all the pictures of him and his paintings of dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll edit that out because I know we don't get political. That's what it reminds me of.
It's so true. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, he could have been painting, like, I don't know. Who knows? Like, who knows what kind of ass kissing he did. Like, it's just insane.
You know who else was an artist and sells her art? Jodi Arias. It's all the connections of Jodi Arias.
Of course she did. You're going to have to add that part in when we talk about Jodi Arias, for sure.
Bitch knows.
Okay, well, so I know I mentioned it earlier. So he did have a lot of visitors just in his time in prison, it sounds like, but also, like, his number of visitors escalates leading up to his escape, which really leads us to believe that he had help waiting for him. Again, it's like, how did, like, they let him know where he was going to go Christmas? Like, I just feel like there's so many things where it's just like, why would he so that he could plan, like, these things? Like, I don't know. So he basically, like, it's believed that he had help waiting for him to basically help him escape without a trace, because even after what they call an extensive manhunt, but I don't know. I'm just going to use the words that they use. I don't know if I can definitively say that because of other information we're going to talk about. Yeah. But even after the manhunt, Lester is nowhere to be found.
Wow, I'm shocked.
Okay, so, like, they say that they did an extensive manhunt, and we're going to jump to 1993, but we're going to fill in some more details in between now and then. But this is why I'm, like, laughing at the whole extensive manhunt, because I'm not really sure how extensive it was. But so in 1993, one officer kind of decides that he hasn't heard any updates in the case in a really long time, and so he decides to look into the case. And he even says he's, like, expecting to see some kind of update. Either maybe they caught him, or, like, they found him dead. I don't know. Like, whatever. Like, that there would be some update in the case.
Can I just say he was my favorite out of the whole thing? Like,
yeah,
he was my favorite.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because, like, I know I started by saying, like, I like to look for the badasses in the story, and I'm just like, this is an example of that. It's like, it's just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna, like, go and check, because you could sleep better at night just thinking, like, oh, I'm sure they caught him and he's, like, rotting in jail somewhere. Yeah. And instead he's like, no, I'm just gonna look into it.
This is a life lesson, Kara. go the extra mile. Like, there's so many instances at work where people just, like, certain things, like, maybe our proposal template is always, like, the most annoyingest way we had a certain thing structured. And every time we would have to undo it and redo it and, you know, make it, adjusting it for the proposal template. And then finally, we were just, like, in a meeting, like, why don't we just change it? Why have we been torturing ourselves for a year? Like, and I understand that does not really compare, but I'm just saying, be proactive, people. Like, if just take the extra step, just the extra step. If just because so-and-so didn't do it and Bobby didn't do it and Julie didn't do it, Bobby and Julie are probably lazy. Just do it. Just do it because, I mean, you might not be able to solve a crime, but you definitely will be able to probably change a lot of, you know, stuff that other people wouldn't want to do in the future. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so true. Because really, it just took one search for him to kick off the rest of this effort that we're about to get into. And so, like, your point, like, your lesson is go the extra mile. And I would just say lesson number 2 is, like, go with your gut. Mm-hmm. For crying out loud, like, so many people will get, like, judgmental about, like, you know, just like an intuition or a gut feeling that you have or whatever. But it's just like I noticed that the people who really change the pace of these cases are the people that are just like, look, I may not really have many good reasons to believe that this is what's going on, but I just want to, like, I want to bring it up anyway. I want to say something anyway. I want to just, like, do a double check anyway. And so this officer had no reason to believe, like, that anything was, like, wrong still. Like, he was on a whole other, like, department or whatever. Like, this was not his case. Right. And he just decided that something, like, something bugged him that night. And then he went the extra mile and, like, looked into it. And then he was not happy because what he found was that so basically there were a couple of arrest warrants that were out for Lester when he escaped. And so there was, like, a local one, but then the FBI also put out a federal one. But what this guy found is that the federal arrest warrant had, I think, expired or something. So basically it timed out, or it was no longer valid. So there were no arrest warrants out for Lester.
I recall that it didn't really time out. It just wasn't in there. Like, and again, that makes me think that there was something crooked going on behind the scenes, that someone updated it and they just didn't check on it. I don't think it was a timed out thing, because then I think they'd have to do that for every case and, like, check on it. You know what I mean? And again, I could be wrong. I might be missing it, but I remember when I watched it, I thought that was weird. I was like, why would it just not be there? You know? And again, that goes back to thinking it was an inside job. Maybe he had a family member or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't remember now, like, what they said, but I do remember him just saying, like, it wasn't there. And so he was just like, that can't be right. Like, either he's arrested and in prison, or, like, he's at large, and, like, for the arrest warrant to, like, not be there anymore, but he's not in prison. Mm-hmm. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So, like, I think that still goes back to, like, what you're saying, like, how does this happen for this guy? So again, like, this is another, like, either someone did help him out, or this was some kind of, like, bug in this, or I don't know, whatever, like, loophole there was here, again, like, was just contributing to, like, because 1993, now it's been, 20 years since he escaped. So it's just, like, who knows how long that arrest warrant was actually, like, active. And so even if someone did find, what this means, like, if someone did, like, pull him over, they weren't going to, or, like, if they, like, arrested him or whatever, it wasn't going to show that there was anything else in the system that he needed to be, like, turned over for anything else.
Right. And either he's, like, the most luckiest man alive, or something's fishy, because he had so many breaks that this is just...
But it just goes back to what you were saying. Like, I mean, I would agree that it seems like everything that we're reading leads me to believe, like, if this were a rich white guy, I would just be like, he has everyone in his pocket. So, like, I don't understand how this guy, like, it goes back to what you said, like, when it's like, oh, he doesn't have anything to offer. I don't, like, I just feel like, okay, well, he doesn't have money. He's not, like, it's not like he knows where bodies are buried on people. Like, I don't know how he, like, would have, like, been able to, like, really, like, mastermind the whole thing, other than just, like, him being a con artist and then, I guess, getting lucky. But like you said, I mean, that's also hard to believe too. Like, I don't want to believe it, because it's just like, that shit's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, either he's the most amazing con artist in the world, or it was an inside job, or he's the most luckiest man in the world, or a combination. It's very strange. I think maybe, I don't know. It's just very strange. I'm trying to think. I mean, if he had family members or if he had friends in there, you would think that they would mention that in the documentary, and they didn't. So, I don't know.
Yeah, because I don't know who was visiting him. They made it sound like, some friends, but and maybe family, but they didn't. They never. I was kind of surprised they didn't go a little deeper into the people that were visiting him leading up to his escape. Because if they believe that they helped him, I'm just kind of shocked that there wasn't more about those people. Like, where were they living? What were they doing afterwards? Like, I don't know, or anything like that. So it just was it felt kind of weird that it's like, how did we go, like, to a complete dead end from 73 to 93 here? And then it took this guy, like, just trying to, like, look for some closure to realize that, holy shit, this person is just still, like, out and about doing whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, I wonder if they even interrogated the people that visited him. Because like you said, there wasn't even... It's just so mind-boggling. There wasn't even, like, a huge manhunt for him. Like, it's just weird. It's just weird. Unless, what was the police department for this? Do you know?
I don't remember. I didn't write down the small town that they were in. But like, I mean, the FBI was involved. Like, it goes back to, like, even if he, like, had something on, like, the small town, like, people, I mean, I don't know how the FBI, like, federal national warrant just, like, goes away.
Yeah. And also kind of, you can also look at it a different perspective, too. And again, we're just talking, but, it also kind of shows how much manpower they'll put if it was a white little girl that was murdered. Johnny Benet Ramsey, what was her name? Ramsey girl. My God, they still talk about that case. They're still trying to solve that case. But little black girl, are bad. By the way, 20 years later, have you seen him? Like, more than 20 years. Like, so it's a different perspective, but it's something to think about.
No, absolutely. Because, like, I mean, I shudder to think how many, like, he ruined lives, like, even just up till now. And then, like, we have no idea what he did in between then and now. And it's just insane because he was 22 when he killed that little girl. And so, like, now he's however old he is. And I just hate to think, like, all the other opportunities that he's had because he's just, like, going around completely unsupervised.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, continue.
Okay. So basically, like, this is important because this officer worked to get Lester on America's Most Wanted to make up, trying to make up for some lost time here because I have no idea how long, like, this warrant hasn't even been out. So looking for any clues to his whereabouts. And this was a really good move because getting him on America's Most Wanted, tips started coming in, and they got a tip from a woman in Los Angeles, California. And she apparently established a relationship with Lester, like, while he was in prison. Like, they kind of referred to them as, like, pen pals. They knew each other before he was in prison. I guess she was married to, like, his cousin, who was, like, kind of a famous singer in Detroit or something like that. But he was killed. So she, I guess she just started, like, writing him. So she knew he was in prison. And then, like, I guess, like, he stayed with her after his escape. So it's like, I feel like there were a lot of questions here about, like, how much did she know, but, like, I feel like it's very clear. She's writing him in prison. She knows that he's in prison. She knows what it's for. Mm-hmm. And then he just, like, gets out and then comes to stay with her. And so she tells authorities that after his escape, like, after his initial escape from the Christmas shopping, he makes his way to Michigan, and he actually waits to basically see how effective this extensive manhunt would be. And so he basically, in the meantime, was painting houses to earn money, and he found a way to pay for a bus ticket to California. And so what really sucks about this, so again, it just goes back to, like, kind of like you were saying, like, it's hard to chalk all of this up to luck. But what really sucks is that his bus was actually pulled over. on his way to California, and he thought that he was done. Like, he's going back to prison. He really, I guess this is what he told this girl, because this is from her perspective. Mm-hmm. But he really thought, the jig's up. I'm going back to prison. I've been busted. And it turns out that the bus was only stopped to search for illegal fruit or some shit. And so, like, he just, like the way she describes it is that he just kind of smiles up at the officer, and they leave. And, you know, it just confirms that, like, in his mind, that he got away for good. And also just confirms, like, his egotistical arrogance that, like, he really is, like, the master of, like, escaping and getting away with shit.
Which that was just sheer luck, sir. Like, ooh, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, what an ego.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess, like, so she tells these officers that he starts using the name Victor Young, and so he's smart enough to get a hunting license to use as his official form of ID, because, you know, it doesn't require as much, like, documented paperwork. It doesn't require fingerprints, and so this particular lady that he's staying with, you know, she starts to be treated really poorly by Lester, shocker, and she wants to get out of the relationship. So, in my opinion, she comes up with a brilliant plan and tells Lester that she got a phone call from the FBI, basically asking about him, and that was really all it took to get this guy out of her life. So I was just like, for any woman out there that's in, like, a similar situation, I feel like this was a really good non-confrontational way to just, like, he only thinks about himself clearly. So he really just wanted to, like, if he thought that somebody was hot on his trail, he wanted to basically, like, get out of there, and then was able to, like, leave her alone. Yeah. She described him go ahead.
No, I was just said, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, so she was describing him as really intimidating and a bully, which I can only imagine, too. It's like, it kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning, you know, it's like, unless he needs something from someone, then, you know, so I'm sure, like, he wasn't like that in all these letters that he was sending her in prison. Right. And now he got his place to stay. And especially, he's probably confirming in his brain that, like, he got away with everything because he got pulled over and still didn't get caught or whatever. And so now he's just treating this, like, girl like shit.
Here's another tip for women. Don't date men in prison, especially if they're in there for murder, and especially if they're an ex-con that escaped prison.
Yeah, I feel like there's plenty of things that, yes, please don't do that.
You deserve better. I don't know why I have to say that, but many women apparently need to hear that.
Yeah, that's sad. Yeah, it just sucks because, like, I really wish that this girl would have come forward sooner. I know it's got to be, like, hard because you might just be thankful that this guy is, like, out of your life or whatever. But, man, at least, like, seeing him on America's Most Wanted prompted her to finally speak up about him. She probably, like, also kind of had this, like, oh, I didn't, like, he's still at large, like, I feel like people, like, you know, he needs to get what's coming to him. And she maybe at the time was just like, I just want him, like, out of my life.
Oh, Kara, you're so sweet. Because my thought is, and I just see the darkness in people sometimes, but, well, not always. I try to figure them out first. But she also, before she gave any information, she got a, like, promise that she can't get charged for anything for, you know, keeping a fugitive at her home. And I guarantee you, as soon as she saw it, America's Most Wanted, she was afraid someone was going to say something and then she's going to get wrapped into it. You know what I mean? Which is smart. She's protecting herself. But at the end of the day, she dated a man that murdered and raped a little girl because she felt like he loved her. No, that's selfish. Like, I don't have, you know, there's no, I don't know. I maybe call me cold-hearted, like, and obviously she has issues for, you know, dating a guy like that, but to me, that's gross. Can I say that? That's gross.
I'm not trying to, like, defend her, but I guess I'm just saying, like, I'm glad that she at least finally said something, because if she hadn't said anything, like, there weren't many other, like, leads that they had to, like, help find this guy.
But she didn't know that. In her mind, she was probably sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, waking up like, dear God, what if they find him? And then, you know, they said, oh, she was dating blah, 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 and then I'm in prison, you know, so she nipped it in the bud, so.
True, but now Netflix has totally outed her. Because, like, he's still at large, and they're like, yeah, she told us everything.
Yeah, true. I don't know. I have no, maybe I'm cold-hearted, but it's not like I wish bad things happened to her. I just don't think she's a hero.
No, definitely. Well, so she also kind of gave them one of their last leads for a long time. So she told the authorities that there was a place that he worked as Victor Young, which was a mattress factory, or something like that. And they confirmed that he worked there as Victor Young until 1985 or 86. And so that was one of the last tips or leads that we have for quite a while, because in 1996 the police, they run out of leads. And it's not until 2003 that there's an officer in Ohio that was tasked with looking into the case and talking to Lester's family members who are still living in Ohio. So this is what leads officers to interview Lester's father. So, like, it is, like you were saying, it's really questionable, like, how much did they talk to these people after he escaped? But maybe it's one of those things that, like, enough time had gone by, it was definitely worth talking to them again, because it's just like, okay, well, it's been 20, I guess 30 years at this point, and he's still been caught.
So no one continued to I don't know, it's just crazy to me that they just were like, well, we're not going to check up on his family, but I don't know why the progress hasn't gone anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's been 20 years and you're not, I just feel like in a lot of cases, if they think you have any information and it's an important case to them, they will be on your butt for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And for this case, they just didn't do that. It's weird.
Yeah, I find that to be really weird too, because, I feel like there's something to be said for kind of smoking out, or I don't know, either you're using family as bait, you're hoping that they're going to contact them, so you don't want to put too much pressure on the family because you're trying to make them think that it's okay to contact them. Or you're trying to limit how many support systems this person has, because obviously he's got, he kind of survives that way. So yeah, I'm really baffled too by okay, so it takes 30 years for them to talk to Lester's family, and then again, like you were saying, maybe going the extra mile to really kind of dig a little deeper to finally get another lead based on his father. Why was that not already happening?
Right.
It just is crazy.
Right. I completely agree.
So the officer interviews Lester's father, who at the beginning of their conversation apparently said, "I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to talk about Lester." And it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, I feel bad for the dad, but come on, because it kind of goes back to
I feel bad for the dad. Why are you the nice person? I'm the bad guy now. Fuck the dad.
Well, I just picture this might be something I say to the little old lady down the street who every day wants to ask me about my son who's a convicted murderer that escaped. But he says this to the police.
Yeah.
The police are in his house and they're wanting to talk to him, and then he's like, "I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to talk about Lester." And I'm over here how do you have a choice? I don't understand. Because I guess I just meant I kind of feel bad that okay, it's been 30 years of probably people talking to him about this, but I don't understand how that's your reaction to the police officers trying to talk to you about this.
Yeah, because he's stubborn and he's not. I mean, I remember that part where he said people change or something like that, and it's and people need the chance to change. And I'm sorry, sir, but no, painting pictures and being a nice person to the guards in prison doesn't give you part of prison is punishment. Part of punishment is I watched a case, and we won't get into it now, but there was another case where they're well, why? She's not going to offend again, and blah blah blah. And he's and he gave her a lengthy sentence. She tried to kill her husband, and he gave her 20 years. And they're well, why are you doing this? And she is a mother, and blah blah blah. And it's to punish her. I don't think she's going to be rehabilitated. I don't think she'd do this again. But she needs to be punished. She did something very wrong. And you're setting also not an example just for yourself and your family, but for everybody, especially if it's public. This is what will happen to you if you do bad things. And again, I'm considering myself liberal and Democrat, but there's also a fine line when it comes to raping and torturing children. That's when I'm just no, in the dungeon you go. Sorry, I'm done.
No, but I agree, because it also goes back to what you said earlier about, like, okay, so the dad did make this comment about, like, oh, well, people need a chance to change or whatever, and it's just like, okay, but he never even, like, said sorry or, like, admitted what he did was wrong, like, just admitted that he did it, and, like, I don't know, so it just goes back to, like, you can't claim that people need a chance to change when there's really no evidence that he ever changed. It's not like prison woke him up. It's not like, I don't know, so it just goes back to, like, yeah, I feel like that was, definitely a really, like,
it's not like he drove drunk for once in his life, which I'm completely against drunk driving. That's very selfish. But you do one bad move, you leave a bar, you think you're good, you get in a car accident, and you kill someone. God forbid. That's like one of my worst nightmares. Do not drink and drive, people. But, you do that, and it's like, okay, you get, like, usually the sentence is between, like, 8 to 20 years, depending on, like, the situation. But I get that. That's where you get the rehabilitation. That's where you get the counseling. That's where you get the remorse. That's when you get all these things in prison that they should provide for that, to fix and figure out why you had that drinking problem. Do you have remorse? Have you made it up to the family? Like, all these steps to get your freedom when it does come time for parole. But when you rape and murder a little girl that never, it's so easy to get wrapped up in these cases and just think of the murderer. And I know we're both not, like, defending this man at all. That's perfectly clear. But it's so easy, just like the father saying that, like I'm sorry if I love my family, but if my family murdered someone and raped a little girl, it's over. Like, you're not my family. Like, sorry. Like, there's no, and not having any remorse. And in fact, even if he had remorse, how, it's such a, I don't know. There's no coming back from that. And if you had remorse, you'd want to be in prison the rest of your life. You know what I mean? If you had true remorse for that, you would be like, please, I deserve to be in here. Like, because there's no other rehabilitate from what? You took away her life, her whole entire life. She never even got to do anything. Like, she was a baby. Like, sorry, punishment. My opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Was that too much ranty? Should I cut that out?
No, it's good.
Okay. I rant a lot. Sorry.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, like, I don't know, because my reaction to this, too, was just, like, your son is dangerous and at large. So, like, on top of everything that you just said, it's just, like, he's dangerous and he's out somewhere where nobody knows where he is. So it's just, like, again, like, you really don't get, like, why they're talking to you, and you're trying to still justify that, like, he's changed, or that you can forgive him, or I don't know. It's just like, if, I don't know. It's very, like, mind-boggling to me, again, just because it's just, like, he's flat out dangerous. That's the only word that I can come up with. That it's just, like, he's putting people in danger.
He doesn't deserve anything. He doesn't. He deserves prison. That's what he deserves. He doesn't deserve anything positive. And he doesn't deserve any pencils and coloring crayons or paints or nothing. He deserves to have nothing to write on. You will never doodle again, sir, if I can help it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, these, what I also love, because it goes back to, like, maybe our 2 lessons. I really like our little, practically our PSA, where it's just like, our lessons for this are going to be that you go the extra mile and you follow your gut. So the officers who interviewed the father, they seemed convinced that he knows where Lester is based on how he acted and how he talked about Lester. So it goes back to what you said. He's over here like, but he's changed. And, like, and then they're probably sitting there, like, looking at each other like, yeah, he just talked to him. Like, right. Because, like, I don't know, like, I can't comprehend what it's like to be a dad of someone that's done these, like, unspeakable things. But, like, I just feel like, I really like how both officers were just like, they didn't just say, okay, thank you for your time. And, like, they were just like, no, there's something here.
Yeah, of course there was something here. I mean, my God, like, and again, the way you act, it's another rule in life. The way you act, if your children did something like that, you say, I love you, turn your ass in. Like, I will come with you and hold your hand and turn your ass in. Like, I'm a true crime junkie. I've seen it happen. Mothers who, like, would do anything for their children have, like made their children turn themselves in for crimes like this. Like, you know, woman up and do it, sir. Like, no pity for you at all.
Seriously, so like the father is, I guess, like I don't know, like I don't remember exactly what his title is, but he's like something. He's like a devout man, or I don't know how they phrased it, but it made me think like he's some kind of like spiritual leader or pastor or something like that. And so like I also just kind of feel like, okay, but I don't know if Lester is just using you to make himself feel better because he's coming to you with his same like con artist like attitude. And so then that way there's someone that can like tell him that, oh, like God loves you and like you deserve a second chance. I don't know, all this shit.
He's
so, like,
giving him, oh my God, Carrie, you're right. He's giving him sick, twisted purpose because he believes his way of life is important. What he has to say is important in regard to religion. And he feels like he gets to preach to his son and giving him purpose and thinking he knows what his son deserves because he's this higher being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's disgusting. So anyway, I'm sorry, but like maybe that was digression, but like at the same time, it's just like, I don't know, there's just so many things that I couldn't believe. I was even just kind of shocked that they didn't take his dad like to a police station to interview him. Like, I don't know if that sounds mean, but I'm over here just like, why would you even like interview him in his house? Like, his son is at large. He could be in the closet. Like, I don't know. I'm just like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
they literally could see like a bunch of paintings in the background and like the outfit he wore at the ball. I'd be like, seems a little suspect, but well, that's what he said. Might as well go. See his like, you know, some guy's pants coming out underneath the bed. Like, you know, like a little weird.
That's weird. Those look familiar.
But he's a devout man. He said so gotta go with it. Like,
but honestly, like my first thought when when I was watching the Netflix documentary and they like quoted the dad as saying, "I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to talk about Lester." My first thought was, "Are you sure he's not in the next room?" Because like I almost felt like that was the dad basically being like, "Please don't make me like talk about it." But then the more they talked about it, I was like, okay, I feel like if anything, this is like he's built a relationship with his son after he escaped, and they're both just making each other feel better about their lives or something. But anyway, that was my first thought. I was just like, it kind of feels like if you're going to interview him at his home and this dude is at large, like I don't know if like he's intimidating his dad. Like the other lady already characterized him as, you know, a bully and intimidating. And so, like, it wouldn't be very hard to kind of intimidate even older man. I don't know. Anyway, but he wasn't necessarily in the next room. But
I would like to ask Lester's daddy if it was Lester that was murdered as a little boy and what he felt would be the righteous punishment in the world today. That would be my question.
It's a good question.
Like, ugh. All right, continue.
Yeah. Okay, so then my understanding is that, so these officers, they talked to another woman who's in the same town as Lester's father. And this lady had visited, Lester's father, I don't know how many times, but basically she had visited him. And she tells the officers that she recalls during, a conversation they were having, because she was over visiting him, he excuses himself to take a call, and when he comes back, he says that he had to take a call from his son in Alabama who was taking a break from painting houses. And so, like, there were a couple of, like, just really creepy things about that statement, because one, we did know from the other tip that he was painting houses in Michigan when he was trying to get enough money to go to California.
Yeah.
But also, the officers already looked into the other siblings and knew that none of them lived in Alabama. So there was a good chance that, if he was telling the truth, that he was actually talking to Lester.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the part where I also am just like, okay, how has this not already been done? It just blows my mind. So the police officers, they go, and then after hearing that, they go and get the father's phone records. And I'm just like, okay, we finally got the phone records. I don't know. It's just really crazy to me. But
yeah.
So they were able to find several calls made to a Center for Troubled Youth in Alabama. So this is the part that really makes like my blood boil about this case, because again, it's just so infuriating to me. It was bad enough, obviously, that this dude is just like out and about doing whatever the hell like he's doing. But he's freaking working in a center for troubled youth when, like, his, like, sex offenses were against, like, young girls, and the girl that he killed was 14, and he was 22, like, trying to, like, rape her. Like, what? And his father knew about it. Like, this is where it's just, like, your comment about, like, you know, them, like, kind of, you know, talking to each other, making each other, like, you know, feel better. And I'm sure, like, the father is, like, looking for his own purpose, like, trying to help his son, and thinks his son is doing good by working at this Center for Troubled Youth. Now, keep in mind, like, it's not like he was there working as necessarily, like, a counselor, but just the mere, like, presence of him being there. Again, it goes back to my analogy of, you just stick a drug addict, like, in a room with, like, some drugs, and then, like, just want to see what happens and expect that they're just going to do the right thing. Like, right. It just, like, blows my mind.
Yeah, this is the dad thinking this son is being successful, and this is the son realizing that he basically gets the dream life, his dream life, access to children. Like, I don't know, and predatory behavior. Like,
yeah, and it's like, and his dad's praising him for it. You know what I mean? Because, like, his dad wants to believe that he's changed.
Yeah.
And so he gets to do whatever the hell he wants, and, like, and then he gets to call up his daddy and, like, get him to tell him, like, what a good job he's doing. So, like, all of this makes me, like, incredibly sick, because it's just like, who knows how long he's been working there, what he's done. We already know how he can, like, con people, and so who knows what kinds of shit. Because, like, this is where it's like, this is why background checks are so, like, important for places like this. Like, no matter who's working there. And so it just blows, like, again, like, going back to your comment about, like, knowing people and having luck or whatever, like, I'm just like, how was he allowed to work in this place? Like, I don't care if he was sweeping the floors. Like, I mean, I would hope that, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's crazy that it's like, we knew that he was using, like, a hunting license or whatever it was in California, and they even clarified, because they investigated this, you know, the officer called the center and confirmed that there was a black male that matched their description of Lester working there, and he also didn't have a driver's license, and he had a false social security number. And it's like, kind of wrapped up everything that has been documented with this case. And as I mentioned, it's ongoing, and so there's been a big push, especially with the release of the Netflix documentary, for anyone that has any information about this case. And what's really interesting is that Carole actually has a friend who knows someone that kind of had their own experience, not necessarily about this case, but just in regards to cases that are open, specifically with escaped convicts. And so we wanted to share some clips from that person, just to get some of their experience. And so we'll kind of dive in to the clips, unless, Carole, you want to add on to that.
No, that's about it. It's kind of like the timeline could possibly meet up with him. He was even talking about, like, maybe he should go back and see if there was a scar or something on his arm, because I think what they said is that to identify this man, if you happen to do see a guy that looks familiar, there is supposed to be a long scar on his arm, on his bicep, correct? I don't remember which side, but that's, like, kind of a thing that would identify him as the convict. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because they have sketches of what they assume he might look like now, but the scar, I think, is one of the things that they're pushing really hard, just because it's not something that you can really change about yourself. You can try to conceal it, but if you were to see it in the exact same spot and he even vaguely matches the description, it's a really good chance that it might be Lester.
I would even go as far as to say, if someone is, like, in 90-degree heat and they refuse to wear a regular t-shirt after the Netflix show and he looks like Lester, I feel like that'd be a little suspect.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just looking for any, like, suspicious activity, even, like you said, of just someone that doesn't, that always wears, like, long sleeves no matter what the temperature is, could be a red flag, especially if they even remotely resemble the like the art of the people that what they think he looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. Okay, so now we'll jump into the voice clips.
How when he escaped, he ended up in Michigan painting houses, and then he went to California, and then the last time they tracked him was in Alabama, and he had called home. Like, there was somebody who visited his dad back in Ohio, and he got a phone call, and he told the visitor, excuse me, he told the visitor, oh, that's my son calling from Alabama. He's on a break from painting houses. Well, we have a story for you. Hold on. Okay, go.
Right, so I bought my house in Alabama about 1990, what was that, 7? It was 97. And it was from a little old lady, and she was, at the time, late 80s, early 90s. And over the years, she would come over, and I got to know her a little bit, and I learned that she was from Sandusky, Ohio, and that she had lived in Georgia for a while, and then she came to live with some relatives across, well, she eventually went across the street from my house, but she moved to Alabama. I'm not sure why. Well, anyway, a few years later, I'm cutting grass, and there's this old man sitting on the sidewalk. And he asks if I want my house painted, and then he said he was Bonnie's cousin. And
Bonnie's the old lady, by the way.
Yeah, and he said, there's only one other guy in town I know that paints houses, and it's some black guy who lives in the apartments down the street. And I said, well, we agreed to have my house painted, and he did it over a period of several weeks. And then one day, this is like a week or two after he's done, Bonnie comes to talk to me across the street, and she tells me that wasn't her cousin, that was her son, who had escaped from prison in the 70s from Sandusky, Ohio.
So we're watching this show, and like they get to the Alabama part, and Joel hits pause, and he's like, this is so weird. And he tells, I knew parts of this story, but it didn't, I didn't know that Bonnie and her son were from Ohio and stuff like that, It's just, there's like a whole thing about escaped convicts painting houses in Alabama, I guess. Yeah. I thought you would appreciate that story. Joel's brush with crime. Yeah, so the guy that lived across the street from Joel and was that lady's son and painted his house was not the guy from the show, because he wasn't black, right? They were white. But he did tell Joel that he has another friend, or knows another guy who paints houses, a black guy who lives in apartments on a different part of town.
No, it's down the street from me.
Down the street.
Yeah, it's down the block.
So it's entirely possible that Joel's walked by this guy, or seen him at the grocery store, or especially if he had a mutual acquaintance or whatever. I don't know. It's freaky. I'm going to have Joel tell you a story about going to the paint store.
All right, so when I first met him on the sidewalk, he said his name was George Hodge, and he was Bonnie's cousin. Bonnie's name is Bonnie Caudle. And so, after he finishes painting the house, he uses the money to have carpal tunnel surgery. And then I don't see him, but I usually didn't see him anyway. And one day Bonnie comes over and tells me this story about how he was an escaped convict, and how he used the rest of the money to have his daughter drive him back to Sandusky because he wanted to turn himself in, finish his sentence, and quit running. So Bonnie said his real name was Jackie Caudle, and so
and it was her son, not her cousin.
Yeah. So anyway, a few years later, I was touching up the paint on the house, so I went to the paint shop, and I said I wanted to use this, and I knew the name of the color. It was Monroe Bisque, and but the paint shop wanted to look up the color just to make sure. They asked who the name of the painter was, and I said, well, it just depends. I'm not sure which name you have. So, I tried Jackie Caudle. That wasn't in the system, but George Hodge was.
So they had him in their system under his alias as like a painter that they referenced, I guess, at the paint store, or who was a customer anyway. And remember, the Social Security number thing.
Oh, yeah. So he turns himself into jail, and he serves a few years, and he comes back. So when he comes back, we're talking, and he tells me how he's, I asked if he was looking for work, because he did come to my house after he got out of jail. And he said no, he wasn't working anymore, he was retired, and that he had to go to Social Security to consolidate all of his Social Security numbers, because he had been working under assumed names. And I don't know how you get Social Security under more than one number without, stealing somebody's identity or borrowing someone's, but that's what he was able to do.
And Social Security consolidated all of it into one payment.
Yeah, I love that story. And I know it doesn't, totally align with this story, but it is kind of interesting to realize how many convicts are out there. And not only that, but demonstrate, how... I just don't get how they were just like, oh, yeah, so you turn yourself in for a few years, and we don't know what the crime was. I don't believe they said it, what the crime was that he escaped from, but, then they just let him consolidate all the Social Security numbers and then retire, apparently. To me, that's a little mind-boggling, but I don't know. It just kind of, it is interesting that you don't know who your neighbors are or anything like that, so... I don't know. It's definitely kind of interesting. I know a lot of people are always especially nowadays, it's a hot topic about who has a green card and who's able to work in the United States and blah, blah, blah. But you also have to understand that the normal guy down the road could be harboring a way worse secret than coming into the States illegally. You know what I mean? And just to earn an income, so just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, that really blew my mind, too, just because it's just casually, when he said, when I first heard the clips and, he's telling the story about how he was like, oh, I'm retired now, and I'm thinking, what do you mean you're retired?
I know, I was I'm never going to be able to retire. How are you retired?
Yeah, and it's okay, so is that going to be the carrot at the end of the stick for Lester if he turns himself in and just has to go to prison for a couple of years, and then we don't know what this guy's crime was, but I'm just over here then get all of your Social Security numbers and then retire, and it's fine. You don't have to pay for houses anymore.
Just consolidate all those lives you ruined. That's fine.
No. That's crazy. It's also crazy to me because at first I was just what do you mean he's going to turn himself in? Because it's just okay, so clearly this guy was I don't know, seemed to be getting away with it. We don't really know this other person's story, how long he was on the run and all that stuff. But clearly it was enough to have accumulated different Social Security numbers, and that mattered for his Social Security check or something like that. But I don't know, it just seemed like he knew that he needed to go back and do that so that he could retire, and that just also kind of blows my mind. So right. I don't know, you bring up a good point of you don't really know who you're living next to, and I don't know enough to be able to comment on how often this kind of shit happens, but it's just how many people are out there that escaped and they've just been, because even Lester, his warrant wasn't out for his arrest and all this other shit, so nobody was even looking for him.
Right. It's crazy how stuff like that can just, I don't know, happen nowadays. And that wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was a while ago. I think he said it was 96 or something like that. But I mean, realistically, that wasn't that long ago. And I feel like even though we have more technology, so do the other people, you know what I mean, that are trying to get away with these crimes. So it's almost like a catch-22. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting. You just need to see where you're. And I'm sure the guy's crime was probably harmless in the grand scheme of things if they wouldn't have let him go in those few shorter years. Hopefully, who knows with the with what we've been seeing. Maybe they took him to the mall again. I don't know. But like but in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure his crime wasn't that big of a deal, or you know, in the comparison of things. But it just kind of goes back to how the whole thing with Lester was handled and how many of like not small but big mistakes that they made throughout this whole man's conviction. Yeah, it just kind of goes back to the whole, like, you know, first of all, trust your intuition. And second of all, you know, if something doesn't seem right, act on it. You don't have to act on it in a dramatic way where it's offenseful to someone or it's going to offend someone, but it's okay to take the extra step to research it or, you know, try to figure out, take the extra steps to make sure that, you know, the people that are surrounding the person in question are okay. Just because, especially because Lester worked with a bunch of kids, you know, so I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, it's not like we're saying to always, like, assume someone's, you know, a convicted murderer that's on the run. But it goes back to what you were saying, where it's just like, I don't know, if something looks like it just, they're doing something weird, something, like, looks off, like, it's just worth it to just consider that it's like, okay, maybe there's a reasoning behind that. And, like, I don't know, trying to pay attention. Like, I feel like America's Most Wanted exists for a reason. And it's, like, their best way to get eyes on the most like elusive or dangerous like people, and so I don't know, just trying to keep an eye open and like you said, trusting your intuition. And when something doesn't feel right, it seems like most of these cases really like I don't know, it's like kind of normal people that really save the day by just speaking up and saying like this like wasn't right.
Right, exactly. And here's the other thing is like a lot of people, like a lot of these people that do get out of prison are smooth talking and are good at working people. And, you know, especially kind of being a woman, I feel like we're very sympathetic and we're very willing to, you know, I feel like the Achilles heel, and this is just kind of my opinion, and I'm sorry if it's biased, and I know it's not for everyone, trust me, I understand that, but just like men have an ego and women have too much sympathy and empathy sometimes. And again, I understand this is not, you know, not for everyone, trust me. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, like stereotypically, I guess is the right word, you know, women always want to like save something. We have like a savior complex, and men always kind of like get taken down because of their ego and thinking that they're unstoppable or whatever the case may be, or they deserve more or whatever the case may be there. And so I just feel like, especially as women, like it's good to like, if you do see something and just like that woman that held, you know, kept Lester knowing who he was, you know, and I understand most of our listeners are probably not have this mindset, but if you ever have had that mindset, even if it's in a smaller version of this, like just put yourself in the victim's shoes, you know, like think about like, what if that was your daughter or what if that was your sister or whatever the case may be? Like if your reaction would have been pure anger, then it's probably, you know, you should actually do something about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess just to build on that and remind everyone that I think like I mentioned that the reward for information leading to Lester's capture has actually been increased significantly since the Netflix documentary came out. I think it's now like $50,000 or something like that. So all of this, like to say, like trusting your intuition and speaking up if you see something, it's definitely worth your while to like report to the authorities what you know. Kind of like this story, obviously, like you know, wasn't necessarily Lester, but it was good that the person in the clip that we heard from, he was really trying to think like, you know, I might have walked back by him in the store or something like that. So really trying to kind of like look for anything that sounded familiar or just keeping your eyes like open. Because one other thing I wanted to say I think in the documentary, they showed a map of the United States with the states that they know Lester either has friends or family living in. And it really goes like kind of coast to coast. So it's not one of those things where we could say like, hey, everybody in Alabama, like keep your eyes open. He apparently knew people in Texas, Alabama, California, Michigan, Ohio, obviously, and so it's just all over the map. So he really could be anywhere, I guess is all I'm saying. And if you ever see anything, or if you remember anything that might be helpful to the authorities, like, please give them a call.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just mind-boggling how many people either help this man or at least even just know about his situation and not done anything about it. It's crazy to me. So I think people need to focus more on the little girl and not this man's charming capabilities, saying that he's changed. But anyway, yeah, like Kara said, if you see something, please mention it. It can't hurt. Is the grand scheme of things.
No, absolutely.
But I think that's it for this podcast. Is that right? It's a really interesting case.
Yeah, it was super interesting, and I just feel like is very applicable given that he's still at large. But yeah, that's all that we have, and thanks for listening with us.
Oh, I do have a question for the people in the comments. Have you ever had something that where you thought maybe someone was a little suspect, where you actually had some kind of proof or some kind of, maybe we'll do like a call-in or maybe read your comments on our next podcast as a follow-up or something that, if you had experience like this, kind of like my friend, where it was just like, cannot believe that happened. It would be kind of interesting to hear that. So that would be a really good comment if you had any insight on that, any experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be really cool to follow up on. So please drop us a comment.
All right. Well, thank you and have a good night.